few weeks ago, I wrote an essay on film lists and how they relate to social justice movements. So today, I'm going to talk about whether, if at all, film should be included in the conversation about activism. So, especially lately, you hear a lot about the cultural impact of Black cinema. And of course, having more Black faces on screen and behind the screen is really important. But I feel like sometimes people act like a racist is going to walk into a theater, see Black Panther, and then go to the Black Lives Matter protest right after. And I think a big part of the problem is that we often conflate watching a movie to experiencing something. So because film is a visual and oral,
that
because we consume film through sight and sound, film experience becomes very physical. Our brain kind of tricks us that the experience we are having is that experience that is being shown on screen. And this is one of the best things about film, you know? We can get really into a story, we can hear the sounds, we can see what's going on, we can kind of understand what the characters are going through, and we feel really engaged through multiple senses. But that can sometimes go too far. You know, we've all met that person who has seen Hidden Figures once and suddenly knows what it's like to be a Black person in the United States. So I am going to briefly talk about whether or not this situation is harmful to the overall conversation around activism and social justice, and whether putting this much importance on film can often silence conversations instead of starting them. And a lot of this is going to be focusing on Black Panther, just because I think it's kind of the easiest film and the most present often in my mind in these situations. So let's start.
If it wasn't for comic books like Black Panther, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
The only thing I know recently that had the same impact is when Barack Obama ran for president.
It's a game changer in a way that I don't think we can even quantify.
Everyone was like, Wakanda forever, and it was just this amazing sense of community that this movie brought. It brought us together with no negativity.
So in this clip, you can kind of see the cyclicality that often happens with, this is the first time, this has never happened before, when we've heard that a couple of times, you know? Because what often happens is there's this big rush, everybody thinks, oh, this in itself, this is gonna get us where we need to be, and then nothing really happens after that. So 5 or 10 years later, or even a year later, that happens again, and we say, oh, this is the first time now. That last time wasn't really it. We thought it was, but it wasn't really. This is the time. And I just want to point out, I'm not saying that Black Panther didn't make an impact. It made a huge impact. It's an amazing film, and it started a lot of great conversations. And it's a great example of how film can be used as a tool, which is kind of the positive side of this conversation. So there's the one side of seeing a film and saying this film in itself is going to be the solution, and we can use this film to start a conversation and extend that conversation and use the film as kind of a tool for engagement. So film can be a really great tool to distribute anti-racist ideas. And when I say anti-racist ideas, I'm not saying that every single film, every single Black film that's released has to be perfectly anti-racist. There can't be anything wrong with it. We have to be able to exactly see the whole experience through every angle in every film. I actually think it's the opposite, where we can take the positives and the negatives of the film, which often parallel issues that are happening during that time. So for Black Panther, for example, I've seen conversations more recently in the past year or so about how the film is actually harmful to Black communities. First of all, I think that a lot of the things that people discuss are actually intentional, and even though the film doesn't outwardly give a position, you can say whether or not it should, but either way, it was put there in order to start a conversation, even if it's kind of under the surface of, you know, the Disney Marvel movie, superhero movie. What I'm really interested in looking at in this video is whether or not these positives, these changes, are significant enough for film to kind of be this central part of social justice movements at the forefront, as I kind of feel like it can be. And when I was thinking about this, something interesting came up where I came to this conclusion that the core importance of this is mostly related to Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And the problem is that we equate the issues of the entertainment industry to those outside of the entertainment industry, thinking that is a reflection of the everyday person and how they experience race. However, when I read an article in Variety about Hollywood and racism and the history of both of those things, my views started to change a little bit. And when you think about how Hollywood is implicated in a lot of the racial issues in the US, the view kind of starts to change, and you kind of start to see how that industry actually has a big responsibility.
Film is silver-coated cellulose. Cellulose is a byproduct of cotton. And there wouldn't be any movies if millions of bales of cotton weren't grown each and every year in our southern states.
When you look back at the parallel histories of racial politics in the United States and Hollywood, you can see these things starting to come back. So this is why when you watch old films, you can sometimes be surprised at how similar the conversations that they're having about race are to the ones that we're having today. Basically, when we look at films of the past and how their reception evolves over time, we see that much of the criticisms that, you know, you might find were actually a big part of the conversation back when the film came out. And much of the criticisms and problems that people bring up often fade to the background. But the movie still circulates, and those problematic views reach younger audiences who just naturally will view older films with a less critical eye. For Black Panther, we don't really know how the reception of the film is going to change over time. We could go back in 10 years and think it's a highly problematic film, or it could become a staple of American cinema. I think it's going to be that one, but we'll see. Either way, the way that we get there has to be approached with a lot of care, not allowing the film to kind of take a life of its own, but using it as a historical marker and a means of expressing complex issues, and this is going to take time. Changing the media we consume seems like an easy fix, but when we look at films of the past and the gradual change that has come from them, we can see that it's not at all a quick fix. It can even be irresponsible to put such a weight on film and media in conversations of activism, because it often undermines the work that these films are actually trying to support and cultivate. In summary, film should be the tool, not the solution.